guys, Cassie here. Welcome back to my channel. So I was getting ready to film a bunch of videos and I thought instead of just wasting time doing my makeup, why not do the AuthorTube makeup tag? This tag was created by Alexa Dunn and I will link her original video down below. Alexa Dunn is a really great YouTuber here. She has a lot of great advice, especially for anyone out there who's looking to be traditionally published. I know a lot of AuthorTubers are more on the self-published side, so if you are looking for advice on traditional publishing, Alexa Dunn has a lot of really great videos on that. And in the meantime, you can have fun watching me do my makeup very unprofessionally because I don't really know anything about this stuff, but whatever. Here we go. Alright, so I've got my no makeup face all clean and cleansed and ready to go. And my hair I haven't done yet either because I've gotten a crazy late start to this day. It's already like almost 11:30 and I haven't filmed anything yet. So today is not going as planned, but that's alright. We will have fun with this tag. So question number 1 is for primer, and it is, what is your brainstorming process / favorite brainstorming tip? So for my brainstorming process, honestly, it's mostly just a lot of daydreaming. I'm not sure if I really have a favorite brainstorming tip. That's pretty much it. I just think about things a lot. I guess a good brainstorming tip would be, I used to go for drives a lot when I wanted to think and kind of be away from home. I also do dishes a lot when I'm brainstorming, because I don't know, it's just like a relaxing thing for me to do with my hands while I think, and it feels weird to just like sit down and think about something and not do anything. I mean, that shouldn't be weird, that's just our society and culture, I guess. We can't just sit still for 5 seconds. But especially if like my husband's home and I want to kind of be on my own for a while, I'll do dishes or go for a drive. It clears my head and it gives me some time to just sit down and think about stuff. Question number 2 is for foundation, and it says, are you a gardener or architect? i.e., do you outline or not? Also, I forgot to mention, I'm not going to be like talking a whole lot about the specific makeup I'm using because I am so not a makeup guru at all. I don't know what I'm doing. So, the finished product always looks pretty good in my opinion, but I don't use like fancy stuff or anything, so I'm not going to be like telling you, oh, I'm using this palette. I don't have palettes at all. So for outlining, I do outline. I kind of, well, I would call myself a puzzler, which I made a video about and I will link it below if you haven't seen it yet. Also, please don't criticize my technique, okay? As I said, I'm not a makeup guru. I'm not doing things properly, but I don't really care. It looks fine and we're going with it. So yeah, I do outline. I usually, basically to simplify my entire video about being a puzzler, pretty much I brainstorm and like daydream about stuff a lot, and then I write a bunch of stuff. Whatever comes to mind first is what I write, and then after that, once I kind of run out of those ideas, that's when I sit down and actually make an outline. I'm definitely not like a hardcore pantser at all. I don't understand how people can do that. I mean, more power to you if you can pants an entire novel, but I don't see how it's possible. So I definitely need to outline, but I don't like to outline immediately. I like to kind of pants for a little bit and have some fun, and then I need to like find some structure. Next up is concealer, and the question is about revision. Do you love it or hate it, and what is your revision process generally like? So well, for my first book, I didn't really like the revision process as much because it felt like, I think I was just a little bit naive about how much work I would need to do after Like my mom and my sister read my book and gave me some feedback, because, sorry, my concealer bottle, like, it doesn't like to come out, and it's brand new, like, it's not like it's empty or anything, it just, there we go. So for my first book, I definitely didn't really love the revision process, but I'm actually really excited about it this time. For the first book, when I was in the revision process, I guess I just didn't know, well, I'm an underwriter is the thing, that's the problem. So revision for me is like a lot of work. It's not just like adding some little things here or there or taking away some things here or there. It's like writing entire new chapters sometimes because I just need to really beef up certain areas. So that was a little bit of a surprise to me when I wrote my first book, because of course I haven't done all this, so I didn't know what it was going to be like. So yeah, I didn't love it, but this time I'm actually really excited about revision because I know that my book has problems, but I don't know what they are exactly. Like, there are certain parts where I can recognize that they are not great and that they need to be fixed, but I don't really know how to fix them. And I really need someone else to come in with fresh eyes and read it and tell me exactly like what is wrong and how I might be able to change it. They don't even need to tell me how to change it, but just tell me what's wrong with it. Like certain things like pacing, I can't really tell if people are going to be connected to this specific character or not, or if I need to like develop her character more before I introduce her, or you know, if certain areas are too slow or too fast. I really can't tell, so I need fresh eyes. All right, next question is for Powder, and it's about endings. The question is, do you write chronologically or start at the end? Do you know your ending when you start? And do you prefer happy endings or bittersweet endings? So I don't know my endings usually right when I start, but I do often figure them out pretty quickly. And I don't write chronologically, I write all over the place, which again is described more in my puzzler video. If you're interested to hear more of that, I'll link it below. So like for my current, well, one of my current works in progress, Broken Together, I think I've written like the first 8 chapters, and then I've also written chapters 24 and 25, which are like the last 2 chapters. So I actually wrote the ending of that story pretty dang soon into the writing process. But I mean, that's not always the case. I don't always know the ending that early, but I did this time. But I do usually like to know the ending at least like fairly early on, especially because what I write is usually like contemporary romance. And it's different when you're writing like some kind of fantasy story. You might have an idea of like, this is the quest this character's going on. So obviously when that quest is over, that's kind of the natural end point of the story. But for me, I'm writing about someone's life and their journey through life and a relationship that forms usually because it's a romance. So it's kind of hard to tell when you're gonna stop that sometimes, because it's like, okay, is this gonna stop when they have their first kiss? Is it gonna stop when they first decide to be boyfriend and girlfriend, or when they get engaged, or when they get married, or when they have their first kid, or when they die? You know, like it really could just go on forever if you let it. So it does kind of make me anxious to try to write a story if I don't know already pretty early on where I'm gonna end it, because it feels like there's just too much to tell, because I could just tell their entire life story. And obviously I don't really want to do that in every book. That might be appropriate in some books, but for the most part, that'd be a pretty long book. And do I like bittersweet or happy endings? I honestly love both, and I've been trying to think like if I like one better than the other, and I don't think I do actually. I really like both pretty equally. It just depends on the story. All right, question number 5 is for eyebrows, and I don't do anything with my eyebrows, so I'm just gonna answer the question. The question is about titles. Do you come up with them before you start, during, or after? And is titling your work important to you or not? Titles are extremely important to me. I love titles, but again, it's not something that I want to force because I really like, it's actually like one of my favorite parts of the writing process, I think, is just coming up with like 1 or 2 words. I really like short titles and symbolic titles that sum up the whole story. I love coming up with that short little nugget that just sums up the whole thing, and it's one of my favorite parts of the process, is coming up with a good title. However, it's also something I don't like to force, so sometimes I come up with a title before I even start writing the book. Sometimes I come up with it pretty far into it. My second book, so Keep No Record is the first one, and the sequel is the one I'm working on right now, called Broken Together, and that title took me a really long time to come up with, and I actually did have to sit down and like brainstorm some ideas, but once it came to me, I like love it and it's perfect. But then my third work in progress doesn't have a title yet, and it's a little bit hard to talk about it because I have to refer to it as my third work in progress. But I haven't gotten very far into the story yet, so I don't really know what, like, the title to me is something that sums up the whole message of the story in a few words, and I don't really know yet what the overall message of the story is for that book, so I can't really give it a title yet. Alright, next question is for eyeshadow. Some people go monochromatic and some people blend. Do you love big or small casts? And what's your favorite character development hack? So also, like, sometimes this light is, whoa, I just looked right at the light. That was a bad idea. Sometimes it looks really orangey in here. I promise I'm not just like caking on a bunch of yellowy orange foundation. It does not look like that in real life, okay? Just trust me. So, do I love big or small casts? I tend to write smaller casts. I think whether or not your story should have a big or small cast is very dependent on what the story's about. For me, with contemporary romance, I mean, if you're writing about like high school students at school and just their lives, I feel like you probably want to mostly stick to their, like the main character and their group of friends, which is probably not going to be a giant amount of people. I feel like if you add too many people to that, then it might just get a little confusing and overwhelming. But that being said, reading The Savior's Champion by Jenna Moreci, which if any of you have watched all my videos, you know that I freaking love that book. And that book really made me think more about big casts, and because it is a very big cast, and it fits really well with the story because a lot of men enter the Sovereign's Tournament, so it makes sense that there would be a large cast, but they're not just people who are like there. You know, like Jenna Moreci does a really good job of actually developing those characters really well and telling, not all of them, but most of them, like actually telling a lot of their story in a very short amount of time. Like I felt very connected to many of the characters in that book. So yeah, I like big casts. I like reading big casts and small casts, but I've never really written a very big cast, but I'd like to try it someday. But I think it just depends, like I said, on the story, and the current books I'm working on right now, like I've already established the cast, and to try to force more characters in there would just feel really well, forced. So I don't think I'm gonna add any more characters to my current works, but someday I would like to probably try to write something that has a larger cast, because I do really like to read books that have a lot of characters and a lot of different subplots weaved in. That's something I'm not very good at, which I will get to in a minute because it applies to one of the questions. But yeah, it's not something I do a lot of and that I'm very good at, but I would like to try it someday. Alright, next question is eyeliner. What is the hardest thing for you to write? Now for this question, I will tell you what eyeliner I'm using because I freaking love it. It is called Stila. It's called Stila. I don't know if you can see that. Not really. The light is glaring off of it, but Stila, whatever. S-T-I-L-A. And it is like liquid eyeliner, but it's in pen form, which makes it so much easier to put on, in my opinion. And the last time I tried a pen form of liquid eyeliner, it just dried up like crazy fast because it was really cheap. This one was not cheap. It was like $20-something for this, but it's lasted me a really long time, and it is so easy to put on, and it just makes it so much faster and much more of a smooth process. So I'd very much recommend this. Okay, so let's see if I can talk to you while I'm doing this. I really don't know if I can. Nope, apparently I can't. So I decided to just put my eyeliner on, and I actually used a different mirror because it was a whole lot easier to be able to get closer. So, question, what was it? What's the hardest thing for you to write? That's right. So I just touched on this a minute ago, but subplots are the hardest thing for me to write. And the thing is, like, being really bad with subplots actually worked out pretty fine for my first novel because it was a very isolated story. With my book, Keep No Record, like, it really was mostly about the relationship between Jacob and Sarah, and Jacob's past and her helping him through his issues, and they were in a very isolated situation. And I did have some people recommend to me that maybe I could do some flashes to like the police station and what the police officers are working on during this time to try to find Sarah and figuring out what happened with Jacob and all that. But I didn't really want to do that because I didn't want to take you out of the mood and tone of what was going on with Jacob and Sarah at the farmhouse. Like, that's what the story was about, and I wanted it to be sort of isolated. So the fact that there weren't a lot of subplots kind of made sense, and it kind of fit with the tone that I was trying to go for. But now with my second book and the third book that I'm working on, like, that's not the case anymore, and I'm realizing that, okay, I need to actually, like, I'm actually kind of bad at that. That wasn't just something that was like, I don't really want a lot of subplots in this story. Now I'm realizing, well, it's probably a good thing I didn't, because apparently I'm really bad at making subplots. So yeah, that's the hardest part for me, and I am working on it. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, next question is mascara. Do you write long or short? What is your typical first draft word count? I totally just said first draft, by the way. I don't know if anyone else noticed that, but I certainly did. So, oh, this is another thing I'll mention because I love this mascara too. I use CoverGirl Lash Blast Volume mascara, and it is amazing. I will say though, I have had people tell me that this doesn't work well for them because it doesn't really add a lot of length. I already have pretty long eyelashes, so I don't really need length, I need volume more. So this is perfect for me, but it might not work for everybody. So I have already said multiple times in this video that I am an underwriter, so I think that is obvious. I don't really know word count wise what my first drafts look like. I think my first novel, when it was completed, was like somewhere around 70,000, like 75,000 words maybe. So the first draft was, I don't know exactly, but it was shorter than that. So yeah, pretty short. which again I think is mostly because I'm not very good with subplots. So I just want to write all the parts that I want to write and that are like important to the main plot of the story, or mostly like the romance. I really like romance, so this is really hard to do. I don't know why I'm doing it that way. I should just pick this up. So I really like romance, and I want to just go in and write like all the romantic parts, and then I don't really care about anything in between a lot of the time. And that's kind of how I am when I'm reading too. Like a lot of times they'll have these subplots that aren't related to the romance, and while I'm reading those, I'm just like, okay, can we get back to the good stuff here, please? Alright, next question is about contouring, which is also something that I don't do, so I'll just answer the question. Tell us about the dark parts of your book. Who is your villain / antagonist? What dark / creepy / tough things do your characters face? So my stories don't really have literal antagonists in person form. I don't have like villains because it's just not that kind of story. So I guess my antagonists would be for Keep No Record and Broken Together as a series, would be Jacob's past and overcoming his abusive history. He had an abusive father, and his mother committed suicide when he was 15, and his sister was also murdered a few years after that, and he eventually became sort of the villain himself. He was a murderer, and that is obviously a big part of the story. Like the whole story is pretty much about Jacob's dark past and how he is overcoming that and moving forward with his life. So in some ways it is a very dark story, and there are a lot of dark elements to it. And then in Broken Together, there's also another character called Jenna, who has some dark secrets of her own, which I will not share because they don't come about until later in the story. So you'll have to read it to find out. But she definitely has some darkness in her life as well, and she and Jacob bond over their shared experiences in that sense. Alright, blush. I also don't really do blush exactly. I do like I mean technically it's called highlighting powder, but it's really more like a bronzer. It's like brownish, kind of shimmery stuff. So I'm gonna call it blush. So for blush, who are you most scared to share your work with? I don't know if I'm really scared to share my work with anyone. I mean, no, that's not the way to say that. I'm definitely scared to share my work with people. I would say I don't know if there's any one specific person that I'm scared to share my work with, or even like a specific group of people. I am sort of equally nervous about sharing my work with any human person. I guess for my first book, I was a little bit nervous about sharing it with one of my aunts. She works in social work, and my book involves a lot of like psychology and stuff, and I know that like the main character, Sarah, who's a criminal psychologist, she definitely makes some choices that are not appropriate for someone in her position to make, and I kind of wanted to make it clear enough that I know that and that I'm not saying like this is how psychologists should act. Like I know that that is not really appropriate and that that's not how someone in that position would act, but it is fiction and you've got to make things interesting. If you make everything so realistic in fiction, like to some degree eventually that's gonna get boring because life isn't really all that exciting 24/7. So you have to make things happen that probably are a tiny bit far-fetched. But so I don't know, I was a little bit nervous for her to read the book because I know that she somewhat works in a similar field and might have like some extra critique on that part of the novel. I mean, basically anybody who knows more about what I'm writing than I do it makes me a little nervous because I feel like they might be a little more critical because they're like, well, that's not really how that works. Next question is for highlighter, which I don't technically have like highlighter, but I do have this like shimmery white stuff that I put in certain spots, so I'll just do that now, I guess. What is your favorite type of scene to write? Well, it should come as no surprise to anybody that my favorite type of scene to write is romance. Shocker. More specifically, I really like to write romantic tension, which is frustrating sometimes because eventually the romantic tension has to fade a bit. Like, once the couple is together, you can't tease the first kiss a billion times. You have to eventually make them actually kiss. So eventually that part kind of, I mean, just like anything you're writing, like eventually you're gonna be done writing that part. So thankfully romantic tension is something that in a romance is really important. So I get to write a lot of it, and it's reasonable for me to like try to figure out how to add more of it to the story. But I mean, eventually that part's gonna be over. So yeah. So at that point, that's kind of when I start to get a little tired of the story, when I'm done with all the fun romantic tension parts and I'm just writing like, I don't know, basically once the couple gets together, like the rest of the story is less interesting, but it still needs to be written. So I gotta suck it up and do it anyway. And the last category is for lipstick, and that is about writing kissing scenes. Do you love it or hate it, and how do you tackle them? Well, again, this should come as a surprise to no one, but I love writing kissing scenes almost as much as I love writing romantic tension. As far as how I tackle them, I think the main important thing that Jenna Morrissey always says this is to get inside your body. So when you're writing a scene that needs a lot of like emotional impact and you really want to like slow things down and make people feel what's happening, you have to like get inside your body and think about, put yourself in that character's shoes and think about what their body is physically experiencing. So like, you know, what am I trying to say? So like, they'll have butterflies in their stomach, or they might be sweating a lot if they're really nervous, or they might even feel faint. Or, you know, when you get that rush of like arousal, I guess is really what it is if we're getting right down to it. You know, it feels tingly and it feels, you know how it feels. Presumably, if you've ever been in that situation, you know what that like excitement feels like. So think about the physical nature of what your characters are feeling and make sure to describe that in detail and show, don't tell. I did a video a while back about showing versus telling, and it's a very popular topic of conversation in the writing community because it's important. And kissing scenes, I believe, is definitely a good time to show and not tell, because that is when you really want to slow things down. You don't want to rush through a kiss. You can tell your reader about a character's entire day in a page if you want to. If nothing really interesting is happening and you just want to get through the time, you could even tell them about an entire week in a page if you want to. But when you get to something exciting and emotionally impactful like a kiss, you want that one, you know, maybe 30-second moment to last several pages, because that's when you really want people to slow down and pay attention and really feel their feelings. And we're done! This is my completed makeup look. This is kind of like my everyday look. I mean, I don't wear makeup every day, but when I wear makeup, this is kind of my go-to look, I guess. Well, actually, correction, this is my go-to look because I need these things for seeing purposes. So yeah, that was the makeup writing tag created by Alexa Dunn, so thank you to Alexa Dunn for that. So definitely go check out her channel, and if you like this video, hit the like button, and if you want to see more videos from me in the future, subscribe below. I post new videos every Tuesday and Thursday. My first novel, Keep No Record, which we talked about a little bit in this video, is available for purchase on Amazon if you're interested, and I will link that in the description box below. I'll also link below any of the videos I mentioned in this video. I think I talked about my Being a Puzzler video and my video about my writing process. No, that's the same thing. What was the other thing I talked about? I talked a little bit about showing versus telling, but I think the other one I was thinking of was my character development hack. I don't really have a hack for it, but I do sometimes do character profiles, and I did make a video about that. So I will link that below as well. And that's it. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see y'all next time, and have a great day. Bye.